My name is Sally. I'm 42 years old and I'm an office worker. My husband George is 2 years older than me and was originally my senior at work. He was a good worker and I respected him a lot. We had a son right after we got married and had a happy family. However, the relationship between my husband and I started to fall apart at some point. It is no exaggeration to say that the cause of the breakdown was my husband's parents. My mother-in-law in particular did not like me from the beginning of our marriage. She was always picking on me in any way she could. However, my husband defended me in the beginning, and he used to be my senior at the same place of work. We used to live in a rural area far from my parents-in-law's house, so we managed to get by without seeing them most of the time. But when our son was about to enter high school, my husband got transferred, and that location was also where my in-laws lived. In addition, my husband's new workplace and my son's high school were close to my in-laws' house, so inevitably, we ended up living close to them. I resigned from the company when my husband got transferred, looked for a new job in the area where we were going to live, and changed the jobs. It was easier at this company than my previous one. Work finished in the evening and there was a little overtime. I can afford to make elaborate dinners and box lunches for my son and husband, but my mother-in-law often arrives at the same time as me, so every time this happens, it feels very difficult and stressful because she's a bit of a bully. Then, my parents-in-law planned a trip to a hot spring and invited me to join them. They said that they want to take me and my son on the trip. What do you think about this? When I asked my son this, he replied, "I can't go because I have camp with my club on the Saturday and Sunday after next." My son plays baseball, which he has wanted to continue since junior high, and the high school he entered had a strong baseball team. So they have a training camp every year from early in the year. I see. I guess it can be helped then.
What? Don't tell me you're going, Mom.
Yes, because I like hot springs.
Are you okay with that?
My son knows I'm being treated badly by my in-laws, and that even my husband has been treating me roughly lately. That's why he's worried I might get hurt in some way. Well, I will be fine, right? If something happens to me, then that's it. My son said, "All right," and seemed satisfied for the time being. And before I knew it, it was the day before the spa trip.
"Tomorrow, go rent a car and pick up Dad and Mom, and then come back."
My husband said this to me while watching TV. What? I'm going to rent a car, and what are you going to do?
I'm tired from work today, so I will sleep until the last minutes tomorrow. Why don't you pick them up and come back, and then I will join you. We're going to the same destination anyway.
My husband is always doing this these days. He puts me in charge of everything. I've been working all day and into the evening. I'm doing the housework on top of that. I'm also the one who prepared his lunch and the dinner he just ate. If anything, I think I'm more tired than he is. I've been picking up my father-in-law. He's just lazing around, making it sound as if he's the only one who is tired from working. When we were first married, he did about half the housework. When my son was younger, George took the lead in doing the housework and was really helpful. As our son got older, my husband's job's responsibility increased and he had less time for housework. But he still helped me clean the house on his days off. Sometimes he cooked for us. But after my in-laws started coming in and out of our house more often, my husband stopped doing housework completely. That is because my mother-in-law interferes. When my husband was doing the housework, she would say, "Why is George doing the housework? It's the wife's job." And she would stop him. "The breadwinner of the family should only do his job." Since she said this to him every time, he gradually got brainwashed and stopped doing the housework. And then he said,
"That's right. There's no need for me to do the housework. Why did you let me do it all this time?"
going as far as to blame me. And when it got to that point, it was beyond my control. And I don't think I can make it right now. My husband has changed drastically in the past few years. The reason he got transferred in the first place was because his job wasn't going so well. So he takes it out on me on a daily basis these days. But when I try to argue with him, he always tries to reason with me and never backs down. I've become so annoyed with him that I've decided to just let him be. It's the most stress-free way to live. I thought about divorce, but my son went to a private high school and the tuition was too expensive. And when I thought about putting him through college, I felt that being a single parent was too much of a challenge, so I couldn't go through with the divorce. I've come to think of my parents as an old man who is a bit of a pain in the butt, but I can bear with it as long as he gave some money. When I think in this way, I'd feel less stressed out. I thought that I didn't have to take quite a risk to get a divorce, so here we are. I joined this trip because it was a trip to a hot spring resort that I love, so I knew I could enjoy it even if I had to do it alone. And if I wanted, I could separate from my in-laws and my husband. Perhaps I'm thought of as a designated driver, but my husband and father-in-law can both drive, so what the heck? At any rate, I figured I shouldn't expect anything from my husband, so I went to get the rental car like he said, and went to pick up my in-laws. "Sally, aren't you a little late? What, that's the car you're driving today? Why didn't you get a bigger car?" "Well, it's better than your mini car." I usually use the mini car I bought myself. I commute to work by car, so I paid for it myself, assuming I would use it most of the time. I don't often go out for long distances, so I thought a mini car would be enough. And besides, I also like the interior and the color, so I bought it. And yet, my husband drives this without my permission, and also lets my in-laws ride it. My in-laws complained about the fact that it was a mini car, and they looked down on me, saying that I could only afford a small one. So I had to go out of my way to take a rental car for the trip. Then I thought, why don't we just take my father-in-law's car for the trip? He could drive up to our house and just drive to the spring resort would be the smoothest way. But my father-in-law said he doesn't do long drives and he doesn't want anyone else to drive his car. So for such a selfish reason, I rented a car and my husband and I drove. But in the end, my husband, who said he would switch with me on the way, was asleep the whole time, and so I drove all the way to the destination. While my husband was sleeping, my father-in-law still complained about my driving, saying things like,
"The best way is to go and stay in the right lane."
He would also tell me that I could have made a right turn when there was clearly oncoming traffic. And when I slow down because I know the light is going to turn red, he would say,
"Why did you go?"
It's really depressing. My mother-in-law, who does not have a driver's license, also joins in complaining about my driving. I don't want my mother-in-law, who can't even drive, to tell me what to do. And at least I'm better than my father-in-law, who has crashed his car at least 5 times, for real. I tell him he should return his license before he gets in a big accident. But he says,
"Don't treat me like an old geezer. I'm not to blame for all the accidents I've had."
He's still driving. Well, I didn't want to get in a car driven by my father-in-law, so I don't mind if I drive, but it's really distracting for me to have him interrupt me every single time. I mean, he leans over from the back seat and says this and that, so his spit flies into my hair and it's really disgusting. When we reach our destination, my husband finally wakes up.
Oh, that was surprisingly quick.
I was really annoyed at my husband saying such a thing in a casual manner. I was tired from being in the car all day, so I wanted to stay at an inn for the rest of the day and didn't go out with my parents-in-law. I went to the hot spring to wash my dirty hair and took a walk around the hotel by myself. And with that, I was able to make the most of my time. We all had dinner together and went back to the room. By the way, I was alone in the single room this trip, so my husband shared a room with his parents. There are a lot of things to be irritated about, but to tell the truth, I feel more comfortable this way. I still took my time in the hot spring and went back to the room. I had a beer and snacks from the store, watched TV, and had a relaxing time. I wonder if my son is having a nice meal with his baseball teammates at the cafeteria. Or is he talking or playing games in the shared room? I would probably get some messages or phone calls from my mother-in-law around this time, so I decided not to do anything. We would talk about how the trip went when we get home. Before I knew it, it was already midnight, so I got under the covers and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up with a very fresh air around me. Oh, how I wish I could have mornings like this all the time. It's still 2 hours until the breakfast time that my in-laws told me. It's only 6:30. It's become so ingrained in my body that I have to get up in time to make lunch. That's right. Since I'm here, I might as well take a hot bath. I went to the hot spring again and soaked in the water slowly. The weather was beautiful, so the open air bath was very pleasant. I went back to my room and called my son to let him know I was coming home this evening. As I recall, he said he would be back tonight, so depending on how the trip goes, I thought I might have to ask him to wait at home alone. I sent a message, packed my bags, put on my makeup, and since it was almost 8:30 a.m., I decided to go have breakfast. I was supposed to have breakfast with my in-laws, so I went to the room where the three of them were staying. But no matter how many times I knocked, there was no response. Maybe they had already gone ahead of me. I had no choice but to go to the breakfast room, but there was no sign of my in-laws. The breakfast room was not that big. If I went around to all the tables, I should be able to find them soon. I sent a message to my husband, but he didn't reply. I thought it was impossible, so when I went to the front desk to check, they told me that my husband and in-laws had already finished their breakfast and left. They told me breakfast was at 8:30, but in fact, the breakfast room was open an hour earlier than that. My in-laws and husband intentionally lied about the time, went to the trouble of telling me to start eating at 8:30 a.m., and that I was not supposed to come to the breakfast room early. Even more so, I was supposed to do the checkout. My mother-in-law told me, "We'll pay for your stay." Her words were a lie. I would have to pay for 2 rooms. Of course, I would not have a car. In short, my in-laws had planned to leave me behind and return home on their own. I was so pissed off, but in a way, it made me feel better. If you're going to do that, then I'm ready to do this. I went to the breakfast room with a refreshed mind and elegantly enjoyed the buffet breakfast. Well then, what should I do now? While I was thinking about that, I got a call from my mother-in-law. "Excuse me, where are you?" is what I said, and my mother-in-law started laughing. "I thought that since we were going on a vacation, we should enjoy spending time together as a family." If that's the case, you didn't have to go to the trouble of leaving me here. Why didn't you just come with the 3 of you to begin with? We only brought you along to pay for the car and the accommodation. But you still got to come to your favorite hot spring resort and have a nice meal, so you should be grateful. If that's the case, they all could have paid less if they'd just gone by themselves. Why should I go out of my way to pay for my husband and in-laws' accommodations? I'm so angry at my in-laws that all I can do is sigh. Well then, we'll just go sightseeing and go home first. Why don't you run back, Sally? I don't know how many days it would take though. My mother-in-law was laughing like a fool. As you can imagine, I don't like being told off like this. Is George driving? I told her to put me on speakerphone so he could hear me. Then my mother-in-law seems to have switched over, and I can hear my husband's voice.
What's up? What the hell do you want?
Were you going to leave me from the beginning?
Don't be so angry. You like the hot springs here, didn't you? Why don't you go relax by yourself today? But you have laundry to do. And John is coming home from training camp, so come home this evening and do your chores properly.
Hearing my husband's voice, who seemed so happy to make me obey him, there was no restraint in me anymore. What? You should at least do your own laundry.
Hey, don't act like that. I'm the head of the household. Even more so, I'm the one who is telling you to take it easy. Where normally, you should be the one crying and saying thank you, right?
That's so old-fashioned and lame, so you shouldn't do that.
What? You're so cocky. I will give you a lecture when I get back. Prepare yourself.
Oh, don't worry about my words, because today is the last time I'm going to see you.
Huh?
Both my husband and in-laws sounded surprised at the same time. Oh, I mean you're not even here today. Or should I say, I haven't even seen you today. So last night's dinner at the hotel was the last time, right? Haha.
What do you mean?
I heard my husband's upset voice, so I quickly responded. Because I'm divorcing you.
What?
You know, just about a year ago, you confronted me with divorce papers, right? My husband's attitude had changed since we moved in, but around this time last year, he was particularly cold. I couldn't stand it any longer, and when I questioned him about it, he suddenly got angry and confronted me with the divorce papers. I was upset at the time, and because I was concerned about our son's tuition fees and other things, I refused to divorce him. After that, my husband immediately said,
"Please pretend that we never discussed divorce. I'm sorry for my emotional outburst."
So we decided to stay married, but there's no doubt that I harbored a great deal of distrust toward my husband. So I secretly hired a detective agency to investigate him. It seems that he was having an affair with a classmate from high school. They met again a little after we moved here, and she was a single mother with a daughter in middle school. I think he tried to leave me to be with the woman he was having an affair with, but he was probably turned down. He probably felt that it would be a disadvantage for him to leave me at that point and only pay child support and be single. Besides, if he had me to do the housework, he wouldn't have to do anything himself. In short, I was treated as a convenient housekeeper from then on. Well, I also got some money from him and treated him like an old man, so I guess it's the same. But I kept the evidence of the affair I'd gathered from the agency to use it as a bargaining chip if something happened. Even it was a past affair, it's only been a year, so I can get a divorce at your fault. As I said this, I heard the surprised voice of my father-in-law and mother-in-law over the speakerphone. It seems that they didn't think my husband was having an affair. Then I decided to say something else that surprised them even more. Just because you've been demoted and your salary has dropped dramatically doesn't mean I'm not going to charge you alimony mercilessly. Again, I hear my in-laws' surprise. How could you be so arrogant when I make as much as you do? Even though I earn the same amount of money, I pack lunches for you and John. I clean the house and make dinner for you both, right? You got left behind and had a cushy job all the time, but you always talked about how tired you were and how you were the breadwinner of the family. I said things that hurt him more and more, and he became silent. I stayed married to you because I was thinking about our child's tuition and all that. But I did some research and I found out that even if I became a single mother, my parents are willing to help. So I realized that I don't need you. Plus, you'd be paying alimony and child support, okay? I'd rather have a happy, stress-free life, even if it means losing a little bit of income. So I'm filing for divorce. Enjoy your day of sightseeing without me. My in-laws were calling my name in a panic, and George was stammering and about to say something, but I didn't care and hung up the phone. The bus to town was just about to arrive, so I got on the bus and went to the station, then took the train to my house. I was so relieved to be able to say all the things I wanted to say to my husband. So I had some lunch and a beer. I was able to catch the bus and the train at the right time, so I was home before evening. I was glad that my husband had confronted me with a complete one at that time. And while I was packing my things, my son came home.
Oh? Aren't you home early? I mean, just you?
When I told him what had happened, he scolded me lightly, saying,
I told you so. But if you divorce him, I will stay with you.
My son didn't seem to be bothered by it. Well, he's a sophomore in high school, so I guess he somehow understood that my relationship with my husband was not good.
Well, I'm going to pack up my stuff.
John packed his bag quickly and efficiently, because I had called my parents to come and pick us up while I was still on the train. When my parents arrived by car, my son transported the heavy stuff into the trunk. That's what you'd expect from a baseball player. My husband doesn't exercise at all, so when we moved into the new house, he kept saying,
Oh, it's heavy. It's so heavy.
Complaining about it and being so pathetic. In no time at all, my son and I finished loading our things and headed to my parents' house. In the meantime, I kept getting phone calls from my husband and in-laws. So after we had arrived and I calmed down a bit, I called them back.
Finally, you picked up. Hey, why weren't you answering the phone?
I can answer the phone whenever I want to, right?
Don't be ridiculous. I haven't even granted you a divorce yet.
Even if you say so, you and I are strangers now.
Huh?
I kept the divorce papers you confronted me with before, so I filed them.
Oh no!
So all I have to do now is ask you for alimony and child support. Aside from that, I only need to go and talk to my lawyer about those.
Wait a minute! Sally, please reconsider. It's true I betrayed you once, but don't worry. You're all I see now. I will take care of you again.
I was so sickened by my husband's words that I almost threw up the lunch I ate. Just how weak-minded are you? I don't have a shred of love left in me for you. So why don't you try again with your mistress? If you try again with her, oh, but she's already remarried now, so maybe not. Haha.
Huh?
My husband was surprised to find out the truth. Apparently, even if he couldn't remarry, he thought that his mistress would still have feelings for him, even though they parted once. Why do men have such stupid ideas? I found out that his affair partner had remarried when I was filing for alimony. She told me that she would pay me alimony and asked me not to do anything to ruin her life. She also apologized for having the affair, so I decided to just get a larger amount of alimony. So it's fine no matter how much money I need to pay for my son's tuition. My husband also paid alimony and child support. George couldn't pay with his own savings or salary, so he asked his parents to pay in his stead. They didn't think their son would give them that kind of trouble. They were so shocked that they were bedridden for a while. Parental stupidity at its finest. But I was able to punish my in-laws too, so let's say it's a good thing. After that, everything was resolved and I moved into a rented apartment with my son. My son has grown up to be a good boy, just the same as he was. Today, I'm at his baseball game with my parents. My son looks so dignified when he stands in the batter's box, and he looks so cool and mature. The metal bat catches the ball with a "kang" sound, and my son gets a hit and scores a run. He raises his fist to his teammates on the base. As I thought about how I want to continue watching my son grow up and taking good care of him, I applauded John's success with joy.
You can't even do housework properly anymore, so you're no longer of any use to us.
I agree. It's time to fire this housekeeper, right? Great! I can finally say goodbye to this old hag. My husband and mother-in-law were shouting at me in a wheelchair, and my daughter cursed at me without any sign of care. In front of me are the three of them, looking down at me with a wry smile. Are they waiting for my reaction? If you're going to go that far, I won't show any mercy either. You will see. I will make you regret it. My name is Anna Taylor, 30 years old. I'm a freelance writer working from home and a housewife. I got married 2 years ago and live with my husband, daughter, and mother-in-law. My husband Jared is 5 years older than me. I met him 3 years ago through a dating app I started with a friend. Jared and I both like watching movies. We had a lot in common, and we exchanged numbers right away. He was a mature man with a smart attitude. I was attracted to him, and we started dating. 6 months later, he proposed to me, and we decided on our marriage in no time. However, there was one problem we had to deal with in order to get married. That was the existence of Maya. Maya and I are not related. She is a child between Jared and his ex-wife, and she was already 10 years old when we got married. She is now a junior high school student. I still feel a big gap between us. I can understand why it's difficult to think of me as her mother, but still she hates me so much. Until recently, she has ignored me even when I try to talk to her. Now she makes fun of me without a doubt. Just the other day, while I was preparing dinner, Maya came home after finishing her after-school activities. I called out to her to ask her about her day, but she didn't respond. I was thinking of it as her ignoring me as usual when she threw something at my back. I looked at what had fallen and saw that it was a bag containing Maya's gym clothes. She glared at me as I picked it up. I will use those tomorrow, so wash them quickly. I spoke to Maya with a puzzled look on my face. I'm pretty sure you had another set of gym clothes, right? Even if I wash them today, they won't be dry by tomorrow. Can you take the other set with you? Huh? Why are you telling me what to do? I said wash them. Even if I start washing it now, it won't dry by tomorrow. That's why. Shut up! I told you to do it, so shut up and do it. You're useless. If it's not ready by tomorrow morning, I will tell Dad and Grandma. Good luck with that. She ran up the stairs and went to her room. She would not take anything I said to her. I had no choice but to take her gym clothes to the laundromat. While I was putting them in the dryer, I was struck by an indescribable feeling of emptiness. I had married Jared knowing that she would never be attached to me, but I never imagined that I would suffer so much. Maya, when are you going to treat me normally? Even if I can't be your mother, I want to at least have a normal conversation with you. Well, I guess I shouldn't rush it. I have to work harder. Someday we will understand each other. I told myself that, and Barry kept my spirits up. I was the one who decided to get married. I must not give up in the middle of the process. I spent every day with that thought in my mind. Actually, besides Maya, I have another problem. That is my mother-in-law. Like Maya, my mother-in-law also seems to be unhappy with me. She has disliked me since the beginning of our marriage. On this day, when I returned home from the laundromat, my mother-in-law was waiting for me at the entrance. "Hey, Anna! Where the hell have you been? Where's the dinner?" "I'm sorry. The side dish is ready, so I will prepare the rest right away." "Where have you been wandering around until this hour? You weren't out playing around, were you?" "No, I wasn't. Maya asked me to take her gym clothes to the laundromat." "Well, are you trying to say that it was Maya's fault? You really like to blame others, don't you?" "I didn't mean it that way." "Just get the food ready. Jared will be home soon. Maya is probably hungry too." "Yes, ma'am. I will get it ready right away." Whenever my mother-in-law doesn't like something even a little bit, she blames me. She would blame me for anything like this. When I was a newlywed, this attitude made me feel sorry for myself. Compared to before, things are a little better now. However, the damage is still done. What hurt me the most was being compared to my husband's ex-wife. Her name was Michelle, apparently. My mother-in-law compares me to his ex-wife at every opportunity and makes comments as if I were inferior. "Michelle could have done it better. Michelle's cooking was delicious. She was a kind and caring wife. I wish Michelle would come back," etc. According to Jared, his ex-wife's affair led to their divorce. I know that my mother-in-law loves Jared very much, but why does she praise the ex-wife who caused the divorce so much? If someone hurt her beloved son, I would not be surprised if she disliked them. However, I don't have the luxury of worrying about such things. How will I get around in this house from now on? How will I deal with my mother-in-law and Maya? I have to think about these things carefully and act accordingly every day. It is very difficult and burdensome. Even so, I was determined to do my best for the sake of my beloved husband. I did not complain to my husband about my mother-in-law or daughter-in-law. I mainly asked him how we can get along with each other. On this day, I explained a series of events and asked him before going to bed, "Jared, are you listening to me? Today I was scolded by your mother and Maya again."
I'm listening. I always tell you not to worry about that. I've told you, just leave them alone since Maya is a teenager and my mom is just like that sometimes.
That's not going to happen. We are going to live together from now on. How can we live together and get along? Jared, you should think about that a little too. Without taking his eyes off the phone, he replied in an uninterested tone, so I questioned him firmly. "Please, I'm serious here. Asking for advice. I can understand they don't like me, but your mother compares me to Michelle, you know."
"What? Michelle?"
"She says that Michelle was a better wife than me. She's always telling me that. You should put yourself in my shoes a little bit. I really want to have a good relationship with my mother-in-law."
"Well, even if you say so, I'm sure it will turn out the way it's supposed to. Time will tell."
"That's just nonsense."
"Nonsense? I'm very serious. All you have to do is make an effort to be liked by my mother and Maya. Think about it and just do your best."
My husband patted me on the shoulder, said good night, and pulled the covers over him. I wondered if he was really asleep or if he was just pretending. No matter how much I called out to him, He never responded. The next day, while I was preparing breakfast, Maya came down from her room. I hand her the gym clothes neatly folded and bagged as she prepares for school. Here you go, Maya. This is the gym clothes you asked me for yesterday. Maya, are you listening to me? These are from yesterday. Shut up! I can hear you. I'm ignoring you on purpose. Don't you understand? Ignore me? You could at least talk to me a little bit. What? You want me to say thank you or something? Huh? Maya sighed heavily and took the gym clothes from my hands. Then she said in an irritated tone, You're so annoying every time. You're acting like you're my mother. You shouldn't have married Dad in the first place. Oh, Maya, that's too much. So annoying. Why do you make me so irritated from the morning? You're really making me sick. She didn't touch the breakfast I had prepared, but ate the bread my mother-in-law had bought for herself. Then she thanked her grandma for the food and went off to school. I went to the door to see her off, but of course, I didn't even get a reply. I had no choice. I should eat the breakfast she left. But when I went to the living room, I found that the dishes that should have been there were gone. The dishes I had made had been dumped in the sink. What is this? Why? Then I heard a small giggle from behind me. There was my mother-in-law with a smile on her face. No way! Did you do this? Yes, because it looked so bad. Maya didn't seem to want it, so I threw it away for her. How can you be so terrible? Why did you do this? Terrible? It's your fault that you can only cook such bad food. It's all your fault. Why? No matter what I said back, my mother-in-law paid back double with her words. She kept attacking me one-sidedly. On top of it all off, she followed me to the grocery store. A few hours later, the worst happened to me. I was on my way home after finishing the shopping ordered by my mother-in-law. That was when I was involved in an accident. I was taken to the hospital by ambulance, but my right leg was left paralyzed. It became difficult for me to walk by myself. The doctor told me that I would have to live in a wheelchair for a while. Although my life was not in serious condition, I was hospitalized for a few days. The hospital must have contacted my family. Soon after, my husband, mother-in-law, and daughter-in-law came to visit me in my hospital room. I was sitting in my wheelchair, and all of them were lined up in front of me. Did they come to see me because they were worried? I was delighted and thanked them. All of you are here. Thank you so much for coming.
Is your leg going to heal?
My husband asked anxiously. I shook my head and answered without breaking my smile. The doctor said it might be better than it is now, but that it would be difficult for it to heal completely. It would be a little while before I can walk on my own.
I see. Then I guess I don't have a choice.
A choice?
Thank you for everything, Anna.
What, Jared? My husband looks down at me and gives a nasty smile. I was puzzled, not understanding what he meant by thank you. My husband, perhaps sensing something, started talking.
Well, it was a short time, but I'm glad I married you. You did the housework without complaining. You also gave us a lot of money to live on.
What are you talking about? Their mood had clearly changed. The corners of their mouths are up, but I sensed something frightening. It was that kind of expression. When I shrank in front of them, my husband, mother-in-law, and Maya, in that order, opened their mouths.
You can't even do housework properly anymore, so you're no longer of any use to us.
I agree. It's time to fire this housekeeper, right? Great. I can finally say goodbye to this old hag. My husband and mother-in-law were shouting at me in a wheelchair, and my daughter cursed at me without any sign of care. I was so shocked that my body stiffened and my legs trembled. My husband, looking down at me, finally gave me his final words.
I married you and kept our marriage also that you could take care of the house. In other words, you are no longer of any use to me now that you are in a wheelchair.
Oh no, does that mean...
Divorce is what it is. Thank you for being my housekeeper all this time. As soon as you get out of the hospital, take your stuff and get out of our house.
My husband took the divorce papers out of his bag and slammed them down in front of me. His part already filled in. Without waiting for my reply, they left the hospital room. The door to the room closed, and the sound of their footsteps and laughter faded away. At that moment, my heart was already filled with anger toward them. He never liked me from the beginning. He married me and used me to take care of his daughter. This is unforgivable. All three of them. I will never forgive them. I signed the divorce papers right then and there and called my mother. I explained the situation and asked her to submit the signed divorce papers to the city office. A few days later, I was safely discharged from the hospital and headed for my parents' house. I asked my parents to tell my in-laws that I had filed the divorce papers and to pack up my belongings. I returned straight to my parents' house. I would never see them again. I felt somewhat relieved and decided to start a new life. 5 years later, a familiar name Jared appeared on my phone. I had forgotten to block his number. I did not answer the call and deleted his information from my phone. The next day, my former family showed up at my parents' house. When they saw me, they knelt down on the ground. I was puzzled and wondered what was going on when Jared suddenly looked up and started.
Help us!
What? What do you mean so out of the blue?
Please, Anna, you're the only one I can rely on.
What is this about?
I need you to lend us some money. Otherwise, we can't make a living.
If I sum up his words, this is what it was. For a while after I left, they were living a comfortable life. But when Maya entered a private high school, their finance had become more difficult. The reason was that Maya was stealing money from the house to buy the things she wanted. Not only that, Jared's mother was also using her son's salary to indulge in beauty treatments and luxury brand goods. When their savings ran out, they began to borrow money. They were unable to repay their debts, and they were forced into a situation where they couldn't borrow any more money. The biggest issue right now was Maya's tuition. She couldn't keep up her grades, so they apparently have to pay high fees to keep her in school. They tried for a scholarship, but her grades were so bad that she's on the verge of being expelled from school. Jared rubbed his head against the ground with tears in his eyes as he finished telling me what had happened.
Please, please, it's just as I said. You must have made a lot of money. So I'm begging you, please lend us some money, even if it's just a little.
His mother and Maya followed as they begged together. I was deeply disgusted by them. 5 years ago, they kicked me out of the house after bullying me every day. Then they come back like nothing had happened when they're in need of money. I knew that I was still being used for their convenience. I was even getting angry. The next thing I knew, I had turned on the faucet at the front door and was spraying water at them.
What the hell are you doing, you bitch?
Again, all three of them screaming and yelling.
Hey, what are you doing? It's so cold.
Don't get carried away, you old hag. We are relying on you and begging you to help us. This is obviously not the way to ask for help. Once their true nature was exposed, I blurted out my true feelings, which I had been keeping in my heart all this time. Relying on me? I never asked you to rely on me. You used me for your own convenience, and now you want me to help you out because you're in trouble? That's bullshit. How much more do you have to mock me?
What? What the hell? How dare you talk to me like that? We are in so much trouble.
I don't care. I don't care how much trouble you guys are in or whether you are starving to death. I don't give a shit. Rather, I'm glad you're in trouble. This is what you deserve. I will never help you in a million years. Why don't you guys just lick each other's wound and suffer for the rest of your lives? After I finished spraying water on them, I slammed the door as hard as I could. I locked the front door and physically cut them off. For a while after that, there was yapping and screaming in front of the house. A neighbor who couldn't stand to see them called the police. They were taken away by the police under the name of nuisance. The rumor that they got into trouble with the police spread throughout the neighborhood. Eventually, the story reached Jarrett's company. Unable to bear the side-eyeing from his colleagues, he resigned voluntarily. As a result, they were unable to pay Maya's school fees, and she was forced to drop out of high school. Now each of the three is working to pay off their debts. They seem to be cooperating with each other, but when they meet each other, they are always blaming each other for their problems. The family relationship is deteriorating day by day. From my point of view, this is all I can hope for. I can only say that they deserved it. I, on the other hand, am still working at home while being taken care of by my parents. My leg has become much more mobile, and I'm now going to rehabilitation to make a full recovery. I cannot thank my parents enough for accepting me back after my divorce. From now on, I'm going to enjoy life to the fullest for my father, mother, and myself.
On the day of the long-awaited honeymoon, my husband, Matthew, says, "I'd rather go with my mommy than you." He left me behind and went on our honeymoon trip with his mother, Lucy, my mother-in-law. Why on earth did my husband want to go to the honeymoon trip with his own mother? My husband's true identity was revealed. My name is Sophia Simpson. I am a high school teacher. I have lived my life solely through my work until now, and it was rewarding to watch my students grow and going on with their own paths. However, since I was so proud of my work that I have not been able to get married yet. Recently, I celebrated my 38th birthday and began to feel desperate to get married. My work is very fulfilling, but I'm very worried about living alone for the rest of my life. All of my friends around me are blessed with families and led fulfilling lives with their kind husbands and children. At the high school where I work, there are students who are maturing from children to adults, and they are spending their time in a lively atmosphere. Seeing the happiness of the people around me, my admiration to get married and start a family increased day by day. I have never had an active love life. I wasn't really interested in it, and I enjoyed working more. Now is the time to be brave. Wanting for getting married and starting a family, I made up my mind and decided to attend a matching party to meet my future partner. Then, there I met Matthew, who later became my husband. Matthew is 36 years old, and he was closer to my age. Although Matthew only worked as temporary worker and had very less income, I got very attracted to his honest and calm personality. "Would you be willing to go out with me with a marriage in the near future?" "Yes, I would. I look forward to going on dates with you." Although it had only been such a short time since we've just met, I felt that he was the one for me. So then, I started going out with Matthew with marriage in mind. On our dates, Matthew was always kind and was very attentive to me. He always planned our dates, and every time we go on our dates, he checks on me by saying, "I hope you are not tired yet." As he checks on me, he would casually carry my bags for me, which makes me feel very much cared for. I was really happy when he made a surprise reservation for me at a restaurant that serves delicious sweets that I like. I think Matthew is the nicest man I have ever met. However, as I went on more and more dates with Matthew, there were times when I felt a little uncomfortable with him. During our dates, he would often talk about his mother, saying,
my mom is.
Almost all of the time, he would say,
I'm just trying to reassure my mom.
and then he would call his mom to check in on her, which caught my attention. I can understand if it's a little boy doing such thing, but I wonder if it's something an adult man would do. I couldn't tell it to Matthew, but every time when he says the word mom, even though I was enjoying our dates, for that moment, I became disappointed. Furthermore, I felt a little disappointed that he would always end each date early saying,
I don't want my mom to worry.
he would end our date early by saying that. Matthew is a nice man, but I think he is too caring about his mother, and I wonder if he's the one for me. Sometimes those kind of thoughts crosses my mind and I become worried. But I decided to see the good side of this situation, thinking, Matthew is a kind man who knows how to take care of people. Matthew is always kind to me and takes good care of me. I began to think that the word mom during our dates was an expression of his kindness and protection, and I began to feel attracted to him for saying the word mom. Then, 6 months after we started dating.
Will you marry me?
Yes, of course. I'm looking forward to live with you for the rest of my life. Matthew proposed to me, and we decided to get married. After our engagement, I visited my mother-in-law, Lucy, for the first time to greet her. I wondered what kind of woman Lucy was every time he talked about his mom on our dates. Lucy said, "Welcome to my home, Sophia. I'm glad you're finally here." She welcomed me warmly with a smile. After talking to her, I found her to be a very kind and gentle person. When I actually met Lucy, I was able to understand why Matthew talked a lot about her. Shortly after greeting Lucy, Matthew and I officiated our marriage certificate. At this point, I asked Matthew a question I had been wanting to ask him for a long time. "Matthew, do you want to have a wedding ceremony?" Matthew looked hesitant for a moment, but then said,
If you want to have the wedding ceremony, yeah, sure. But to tell you the truth, I feel like there's no need to have the wedding ceremony.
"Why not?"
Isn't it so hard to prepare for a wedding ceremony? Even on the wedding day, I have to worry and care about my friends and acquaintances, and I don't think I have the capacity to do so. Instead of having a wedding ceremony, I'd rather spend my time with only you, going on trips and doing fun things, just the two of us.
I totally agreed with Matthew's idea. Besides, at my age, I was a little reluctant to walk in front of my friends in a wedding dress now. I told Matthew an idea I have been thinking about for a while. I honestly don't think we need to have a wedding either. I was thinking, why don't we not have a wedding ceremony, but instead, let's have a grand honeymoon? We'll go to places we've never been and make some great memories just for the two of us. How do you feel about that idea? Matthew perked up and said,
That's such a great idea. Let's make it the best honeymoon ever.
He said in such a happy voice and agreed to my idea. From then on, Matthew and I started to prepare for a grand honeymoon. We decided to share the travel expenses between us, but since my income was greater than Matthew's, I paid more than him.
I'm sorry for putting the burden on you to pay more than me. I don't mean to say this as an alternative, but can you leave it to me to arrange the travel destination and prepare your luggage?
Are you sure about this? Since it is both our honeymoon, shouldn't the two of us discuss and prepare for it together? Matthew looked troubled and said,
I feel so bad that you paid so much for me. I just wanted a chance to make up for it. Besides, it's our honeymoon and I wanted to have a surprise for you.
I didn't think that Matthew was drawn aback about the travel expenses. I was a little resistant of Matthew's idea because I wanted the two of us to discuss things together and get ready for our honeymoon. However, I thought by leaving everything to Matthew makes him feel less intimidated about this honeymoon trip, then I'll count on him to do all of the arrangements and the preparation of the luggages. Besides, what is the surprise he's going to prepare for me? I got excited about it, and it seemed like the best idea to leave all the preparations to Matthew. Fine, then can you do the preparations for me? I'm really looking forward to the surprise. With a big smile on my face, I agreed to Matthew's idea. And on the day of the honeymoon, I was very impatient. I didn't see any of my luggages for the grand honeymoon. Matthew said,
I'll pack your luggages for the trip. I know you had a hard day at work, so you just get some rest for your trip.
I took advantage of his kind words and rested early yesterday. What did Matthew do with my luggages? I wonder if he has prepared it properly. I asked Matthew, who has just woken up and is looking sleepy. Good morning, Matthew. Thank you for all your preparations until today. By the way, where are my luggages for the trip? I can't find them. Matthew looked a little annoyed, but as if he had come to his senses, he took a deep breath and began to speak.
Actually, I didn't prepare any luggages for you.
Since I didn't understand what he was saying, I looked at him with a blank stare. Wait, what do you mean by you didn't prepare my luggages? Our honeymoon is today, remember?
You are not going to the honeymoon, Sophia. I want you to stay home for the rest of the day.
Matthew, I don't understand what you're saying. Are you saying that our honeymoon dates have changed? If that's the case, I wish you would have told me about it in advance.
No, that's not what I mean. I've decided to go on my honeymoon with my mommy.
I was taken aback. I have heard Matthew talk about his mom many times before, but I've never heard him call his mom mommy before. How could a man in his late 30s call his own mother mommy? And did Matthew just say he was going on his honeymoon with his mommy? There were just too many things I couldn't understand. As my brain was scrambling for words, I said to Matthew, "What are you saying?"
Well, when I started planning and preparing for our honeymoon, and I started thinking that this trip would be more fun with my mommy than going to the trip with you.
You said it yourself. Let's make the best memory on our grand honeymoon with just the two of us. Are you saying it was all a lie?
That's not what I meant. At first, I wanted to make great memories on the honeymoon with just the two of us. But as I planned the trip, I started to realize that going on this honeymoon with my mommy would make it more better.
I still don't understand what you are saying. Do you have any idea how much nonsense you're saying? I've always felt a little uncomfortable before with you whenever you're talking about your mother. And now, you call your mother mommy. Don't you think that that's a strange thing for a man in his late 30s to call his mother mommy? I finally exploded on the fact that I felt strange about Matthew's love towards his mommy. Matthew perhaps didn't want that to be pointed out, but finally got pointed out by me. And suddenly, he changed his attitude towards me.
Shut up! Stop saying such thing. Of course, I'd rather go on my honeymoon with my mommy than you.
Matthew yelled at me angrily with his face all red, a face he had never shown to me before.
I want to take mommy on this trip rather than you. Why can't you understand this feeling?
I was very confused by Matthew's behavior and me not being able to go to the honeymoon, which I have been very much looking forward to. I wanted to say something back, but my mind went blank and there were no words coming out of my mouth. Matthew saw me standing there in a daze, which he interpreted as me agreeing to the idea of Matthew and Lucy going on our honeymoon. Since Matthew thought I agreed to his idea, his face became gentle again.
Thank you for understanding. I'll do my best to have fun with my mommy on the honeymoon.
As he said this, he packed up his luggages to get ready to leave the house.
I don't want to keep Mommy waiting, so I'd better get going. Don't worry, I'll be back with lots of souvenirs, so please look forward for them.
I really wanted to stop him by saying, "Don't go!" But at the same time, I didn't want to see his face right now, and I didn't feel like talking to him. Besides, right now, all I could think was how to revenge him for what he has done. I just said, "Fine," and saw him leave our house. As soon as Matthew left the house, I called Lucy. Lucy answered the phone right away with a kind and warm voice like always. "Lucy, there is actually something I wanted to tell you." What a great timing to call, because I wanted to talk and say thank you to you. What are you talking about? Sophia, you gave me today's trip as a gift, didn't you? I know you're newlyweds and want to enjoy your time as a couple. So, thank you for even caring about me at a time like this. I didn't understand what she was saying, so I was a little confused. There seems to be a misunderstanding going on between me and Lucy. I bet Matthew did not tell how the trip was gifted to Lucy. Lucy's voice sounded very excited, and even over the phone I could tell how happy she was. I was uncomfortable at the thought to tell her the truth, but I had no other choice but to tell her the truth. I braced myself and told her the truth. "Lucy, did you ever ask Matthew how he came up with the idea of going on to this trip?" "From Matthew, I heard that even though you two are just newlyweds, you wanted me and Matthew to go on a trip, just the two of us, to show gratitude." I knew it. I found out that Matthew had been twisting the truth and telling Lucy lies for his own convenience. Matthew's cowardly tactics made me feel more and more angry. However, Lucy, who was not told of the truth, is also the victim. I decided to calmly continue the conversation before Matthew arrived at Lucy's house. "Actually, this trip between Matthew and you was not originally for a mother-son trip." "What are you saying, Sophia?" "Actually, Matthew and I were supposed to go on our honeymoon today. Instead of having a wedding ceremony, we decided to go on a grand honeymoon to create the best memories, just the two of us. Since I covered most of the travel expenses, Matthew took the charge to make the arrangements and preparations for the trip." Lucy perhaps sensed a bad premonition. Her mood changed from excitement to a serious mood and heard me out. "Until today, this morning, I was very much looking forward to our grand honeymoon. But then today, Matthew told me that he would rather go on a trip with you than me." "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this." Lucy sounded very shocked over the phone. "I honestly couldn't understand why Matthew would want to go on this honeymoon with you. However, I couldn't stop him from leaving our house. Lucy, that's why I need your help." Lucy sounded like she was thinking through over the phone. Matthew is just a kind person who thinks the best for his mother. However, that excessive kindness towards his mother encouraged him to do a foolish thing, betray his newly wedded wife. Lucy is an intelligent person, and she understands what's right and wrong. After a moment, Lucy opened her mouth. "I'm so sorry for Matthew giving you such a hard time. I have a great idea." Lucy and I started to discuss ways to punish Matthew. It seemed that Matthew arrived at Lucy's house shortly after our punishment plan was finalized. I hung up the phone and started preparing my revenge on Matthew. And so begins the honeymoon that Matthew and I will never forget for the rest of our lives. The honeymoon begins with an unexpected event for Matthew. When Matthew went to pick Lucy up at home, Lucy suddenly told him, "I'm not feeling well."
"Mommy, are you alright? Forget the trip. Let's go to the hospital."
Matthew says anxiously to Lucy, who responds without a care. "When you are around me, since you annoy me, I feel a lot worse. Stay outside until I tell you to come back." Matthew was upset and concerned at the cold response from his mother, who was normally gentle, but he did as she asked and waited outside for her to recover. Lucy was able to keep Matthew waiting outside the house. This is part of our punishment plan. Then, Lucy called her husband, Sean, Matthew's older brother George, and my parents, Ron and Chelsea. A few hours later, Lucy told Matthew, "I'm feeling much better. Let's go on this trip." Even though the schedule of the trip was way behind, Matthew was still excited and was happy just because he was able to go to this trip with his favorite mommy. Matthew had no idea what was going to happen to him. Matthew was shocked when he arrived at the destination. That is no surprise. It was supposed to be just Lucy and him being on the trip, but as soon as they landed, he saw Sean, George, Ron, Chelsea, and I, who he didn't invite, awaiting for him.
What the hell is this? Why are you guys here?
I invited them, Matthew. Matthew looked shocked.
But why? We talked about enjoying the trip, just the two of us.
Sophia told me everything before you came to pick me up. Matthew glared sharply at me.
Why did you have to tell her? I told her a story so she didn't have to worry about it. I even made the story sound like it was a trip you suggested so that you will be liked by mommy, you know.
I was taken aback by Matthew's incomprehensible statement. You are the one who lied to everyone. Don't you understand?
Shut up! This is not the honeymoon I planned.
Matthew looked extremely annoyed that we had ruined the travel plan he had envisioned for him and Lucy. Does he not feel sorry for me? Then Lucy said, "That's enough," she scolded Matthew. "If I go on the trip with you, then it won't be a honeymoon from the first place." Matthew seemed quite upset and shocked by Lucy's scoldings. His angry expression from earlier changed and he now looks as if he is about to cry. Did you think I would be happy with you doing this to me? You just got married to her and already you're making your wife sad. I thought you were a kind and sincere person. I was very proud of you, don't you understand? And yet, I can't believe you lied to your wife and me to organize a trip like this. Following Lucy's comments, Sean, George, and Ron started to speak to Matthew.
You are pathetic. Don't you make your wife sad when she happily married you. You have always been blind when it comes to your mother, but this is way out of hand, Matthew. This is an opportunity for you to re-evaluate your unusual obsession with mother. I thought you were a very sincere, kind, and nice young man, but doing such thing like this, I can't trust my precious daughter to a man like you. Maybe you should rethink about your marriage.
Matthew was getting smaller and smaller as the other family members kept attacking him. No one here was in the mood to enjoy the trip anymore. Although Matthew had thoroughly planned and prepared for this honeymoon, the trip was cancelled and we all had to return. I decided to return to my parents' house because I wanted to have my own time away from Matthew. The next day, Matthew and Lucy came to visit me at my parents' place.
I am so sorry. It was a very stupid thing I did when I looked back on it. I'll spend the rest of my life making up for it. I hope you can forgive me.
Matthew gets down on his knees and apologizes, begging for forgiveness. I couldn't respond right away because I was afraid that Matthew might betray me again. Seeing my reaction, Lucy started to speak gently. I am apologizing to you on his behalf also. I am so sorry for the terrible things my son has done to you, Sophia. I will make sure that all of your travel expenses will be repaid by Matthew. I understand how you feel that you can no longer trust Matthew. I have spoiled him so much that he has never been able to leave me. I will stop contacting Matthew frequently and keep a healthy distance from him. This, I promise.
Oh no! Keeping a distance? That's too much, Mom.
Matthew gave Lucy his pleading look. Haven't you learned your lesson yet? That's enough. If you have time for me, take care of the woman who married you instead. Matthew was very sad and started to cry as Lucy, whom he loved, took her distance from him. I still felt a little guilty for making Matthew cry, but Lucy helped me get the revenge I wanted, and she was very faithful to me. For Lucy, I decided to believe in Matthew just one more time and move on forward together as husband and wife. Today, my husband is doing the household chores and devoting himself to me, taking Lucy's advice. Take good care of the woman who came to be your wife. Although we had some problems right after we got married, we are very happily married now.
Do you realize how much freedom Tyler gives you? He works for a big company and earns $5,000 a month. You are supposed to be at home and supporting your husband who is doing the hard work and protecting the family. And yet, no matter how much I tell you, you keep getting cocky like that. I've had enough of this. You and Tyler need to get a divorce. With those words, my mother-in-law pulled out the divorce papers from a drawer. My name is Mona, a 34-year-old office worker. My husband Tyler and I had been married for 5 years. We had been living happily since we got married. But our relationship started to fall apart because of one thing. That trigger was my mother-in-law. My husband and I originally lived together in a rented apartment. However, about 2 years ago, my father-in-law passed away due to illness. My mother-in-law, who was now alone, began to push us to live with her. To be honest, I was against the idea of moving in together. I wanted to enjoy my time as a couple. And if we were to live together, I would have to live at my parents-in-law's house. I was very happy with the apartment I was renting, and I did not want to move. However, my mother-in-law started coming to our house repeatedly after she started saying that she wanted to live with us. At first, my husband said, "You're fine on your own, aren't you? You're still young and healthy." But when she kept coming over and over again, it became a hassle. "Hey Mona, my mom has insisted so much, so I'm thinking of moving in with her." Tyler had started to give in to her pushiness. As a result, it became 2 against 1, and I had no choice but to agree to live with her. So this is how it started. Living at my in-laws, it was the beginning of hell. My mother-in-law is a very old-fashioned person, and she didn't like the fact that I, her daughter-in-law, was working. "Why does Tyler come home before you? Normally, a wife cooks dinner and welcomes her husband, right? You are a lousy wife to work for money to have fun and neglect the housework." My mother-in-law says so and blames me for it every day. "I don't work for money to play. I work for money to live." I told her so, but she did not listen to me at all. "It's no use trying to deceive me like that. Tyler's earnings are enough for us, so you should quit your job." That's how my mother-in-law told me to quit my job. "Stop it, Mom. Mona is working for our family. Don't tell her to limit herself like that." But my husband comes in to protect me whenever my mother-in-law blames me. My mother-in-law is at a loss for words when my husband, her only son, talks back to her. It's like she doesn't want to fight with her precious son. "It seems that you have brainwashed him, so I will have to break that brainwashing someday." My mother-in-law says that to me when my husband is not around. I don't know if she just wants to bully me, or if she has her head stuck in the old way of thinking. But either way, I wish she would be more flexible. After all, she was the one who requested to live together in the first place. My mother-in-law soon stopped nagging me when my husband is around, because my husband protects me every time. However, when my husband is away, she starts right away. "Why do you let Tyler wash the dishes when he feeds you? I can't believe it." This is a rule that my husband and I decided together. Tyler can't cook, So I cook every day, and Tyler does the dishes. When I say this, my mother-in-law looks disgusted. When I was young like you, we weren't allowed to do that. And after making such a bad dish, how dare you talk like that? You should ask him to do the dishes after you make better food. Seriously? I could just make her skip meals every day. I usually cooked with a light flavor. This is because my husband's health checkup results were not so good. And my mother-in-law is also old, so she should take care of her health. That's why I keep the seasoning light. So she had no reason to complain about it. If she didn't like it, she should have made it herself. And I still have other complaints about my mother-in-law. She spends too much money. She frequently buys new clothes and expensive luxury brand bags. I always frown when I see her matching the clothes she buys in front of the mirror. Did you buy clothes again? What? Are you complaining? It's not like you are paying for it. Tyler earns a lot of money, so that you can live a rich life like this if you are jealous. I gave birth to him, so you should be more grateful. To say the truth, I wish you would use your money for me rather than playing around with it. I was horrified. My mother-in-law would spend it all in a heartbeat. If I gave her my salary as it is, I would never do such a thing. Fortunately, I had already converted the bank book of my own account to an electronic one, so there was usually no need to worry about it being seen. The one for the shared account is hidden in my room. Still, it is hard for me not to tell the truth to my mother-in-law. In fact, if you compare my husband's earnings with me, mine are much higher. I work as an employee of a general company, and I'm currently in the position of section manager. On top of that, on weekends, I make use of the certification I have and teach English online. I am a pretty popular teacher, if I do say so myself. So when I combine my income from working as a company employee and an English teacher, it's quite a lot. On the other hand, my husband used to work for a large company, but his job was too strenuous and he became mentally ill. As a result, he had to resign from his job and is currently looking for a new job while working part-time. However, we have been living like that for about 2 years now. I think he's not planning to look for a full-time job. When we moved in together, my husband told me that he didn't want his mother to worry about him. He asked me not to tell his mother that he had resigned from his job due to a mental illness. He said that if she found out, she might go to his former company to yell at them. I'm sure that his mother, who loves his son very much, would do something like that. I did as my husband asked and promised not to tell his mother about our income. However, she always says that my husband earns money to support me, when even her wasteful spending comes from my income. I don't understand why she treats me so poorly. Stress built up inside me little by little. Then one day, I received a call from a friend of mine who had not seen me for about 6 months because she was busy. I was happy to hear from her out of the blue. Hey, what's up? Oh, Mona, your husband hasn't found a new job yet, has he? No, he hasn't. Why are you talking about my husband? I was just driving through town on my way back from my client's place. I saw your husband walking arm in arm with a young girl. What? My mind went blank. My husband having an affair? That's impossible. We are a close couple. Even though we sometimes fight, my husband protects me from my mother-in-law, and we have normal conversations at home. But I can't believe that he is having an affair. But I don't think my friend is joking either, since I haven't heard from her in a while. And she is calling me during the day while working. She is not the kind of friend who would pull a prank like that. My mind was a jumble of feelings of wanting to believe my husband and feeling uneasy. I decided that I had no choice but to make things clear. So I asked the credit agency to conduct an investigation. I was really stressed for a few weeks until the results of the investigation came back. And that's the same time when my mother-in-law was being troublesome. Tyler, I want to go on an overseas trip. What? Overseas? Why all of a sudden? My friend's son gave her a trip to Europe to celebrate her 60th birthday. So I wanted to go on a trip to Europe for my birthday too. I see. You're turning 60 this year, huh? My husband crossed his arms and started thinking in front of me. No. It's not your problem. I'm the one paying for it. And I'm absolutely against it. I was thinking such a thing in my mind. I was distrustful of my husband. But as long as there was no evidence yet, I try not to talk about our income. Then my husband agreed to do it. I couldn't help but butt in. Wait, Tyler! Don't just decide on that without asking me. A trip to Europe costs a lot of money, you know? I said in a slight panic. And as always, my mother-in-law started to attack me. What? I didn't ask you for anything. I'm asking Tyler. You don't bring money into the house, and you don't even do the housework, so don't interrupt me, she shouted. And then she continued. You know, do you realize how much freedom Tyler gives you? He works for a big company and earns $5,000 a month. You were supposed to be at home and supporting your husband who is doing the hard work and protecting the family. And yet, no matter how much I tell you, you keep getting cocky like that. I've had enough of this. You and Tyler need to get a divorce. My mother-in-law told me to divorce my husband. This surprised my husband as well as me. What are you talking about? Don't decide our divorce. Tyler, you were deceived by this woman. She's just using you for her own convenience. If you stay with her, you will be unhappy. So, break it off. Saying this, my mother-in-law pulled out the divorce papers from the drawer. My husband, who didn't think she had even prepared such a thing, was obviously surprised. Mom, come on. Why do you even have divorce papers ready? My husband apparently has no intention of divorcing me. At the time, I had a faint hope. I thought that the reason my husband did not want to divorce me was because he loved me, and that what my friend had seen was someone else. I wanted to believe that my husband was not having an affair, and that he was thinking of me and only me. I wanted to believe that. So I refused to sign the divorce papers, just as my husband had refused. However, my faint hopes soon went down the drain. I received a letter from the credit agency informing me of the result of their investigation. When I checked the contents, I found a number of photographs of my husband. It was obvious my husband was having an affair. I was shocked. At the same time, I was furious. I knew that my husband had been acting like a good husband at home. But behind my back, he was having a good time with a young woman. The woman he was having an affair with was a waitress at a cafe where he worked part-time. She was 24 years old, 10 years younger than my husband. I guess it was because she was so young that my love for my husband instantly disappeared. Then, around that time, my mother-in-law booked a trip to Europe. Of course, I had no intention of going, but my mother-in-law had a triumphant look on her face. Mona, you are staying at home, okay? You always spend too much of Tyler's money as much as you want, she said. I don't want to pay for the overseas trip of my husband, who is having an affair, and my mother-in-law, who is a bully. So I whispered to my husband, you are going to have to use your own money this time. My husband got quite upset and whispered back, wait a minute. It's a married couple's business, so you'll have to pay for it. It seems that he intends to rely solely on me. Now, it was clear that my husband only sees me as a convenient housekeeper who earns money for him. I'm divorcing you. What? Why? Divorce? I had said this in a voice that even my mother-in-law could hear. And she brought me the divorce papers with a very happy look on her face. So, you finally decided to move out of this house. Isn't it great news, Tyler? Now, you won't have to throw your money down the drain. Tyler could not seem to tell the truth to his mother because he had kept it from her for so long. He signed the divorce papers under his joyful mother's presence. I'll take it and file it at the office, I said as I packed up my belongings to leave. My mother-in-law grinned triumphantly and said, I want to help you even if you were in debt, and walked me out. My husband had his head down without saying a word. I went back to my parents' house, filled out my part of the divorce papers, had my parents sign the witness box, and submitted the divorce papers to the government office. Then, of course, I sent the content-certified letter through my lawyer to Tyler and the affair partner's workplace. I blocked his contact information, and he could not contact me even if he needed to. But instead, he came to my parents' house alone. I didn't want to see him, so my father handled it. Tyler insisted that he couldn't pay alimony. I guess he had not told his mother anything yet, seeing that she was not there. My father turned Tyler away without question, so I never had to see his face. And he made him promise to pay me through my lawyer, even if it was in installments. Then, about 3 months later, this time, my ex-mother-in-law and my ex-husband came to my parents' house together. I was living at home at the recommendation of my parents, so I was there just when they came. Again, my father handled the situation first. My mother and I listened and watched. Then I heard my ex-mother-in-law screaming, "Why have all the lifelines in our house stopped? Your daughter must have done something. She's not taking Tyler's salary, is she?" I heard such a voice, and I was impressed how this woman could be so confident. She never admits that her own son is at fault, and she just wants to make me the bad guy. I kind of felt sorry for my ex-mother-in-law and decided to show my face in front of the two of them. When my ex-mother-in-law noticed me, she widened her eyes and yelled at me. "You finally showed your face. You put both Tyler and me in a lot of trouble. I don't know how you did it, but you gotta get the power and water back on. I didn't even get to go to Europe for my 60th birthday celebration because of you. I would like to calmly tell you that I am not in charge of paying utility bills and so on. After our divorce, I leave all that to Tyler. If the lifeline is stopped, it's because Tyler's salary isn't enough to pay it, isn't it? When I said this, my ex-mother-in-law raised her voice. Are you stupid? Tyler works for a big company and earns $5,000 a month. How can he not be able to pay the bills? Apparently, Tyler hasn't told his mother after all. I showed her my tax slip to show her the reality. This is my income from my company, and this is my income from teaching English online. You teach English? My ex-mother-in-law was clearly surprised. Then she took a close look at the withholding tax slip, and her eyes widened. Well, it looks like it's true that you receive about $5,000 a month. Then, what about Tyler's salary? If it's the same as it was right before we broke up, he's a part-timer at a cafe. I would say his take-home pay is about $600 a month. $600? And since he has to pay the alimony for the affair, I bet he has very little money for living expenses. Right? An affair? Why? Isn't Tyler a businessman working for a big company? My ex-mother-in-law was about to collapse because the reality was so far away from what she thought it was. Tyler looked uncomfortable. Mom, I'm sorry. I have been meaning to tell you. He apologized. Then she started to say something outrageous. Mona, I'm sorry. I said selfish things without knowing anything about you. I will reflect on what I said, so please come back. What in the world is this person talking about? How can you ask me to come back under the circumstances? I am already divorced from Tyler, so we are strangers. There's no reason for me to go back. And I'll still have to support you too, even if I did. Who would want to go back in that situation? If you stay here any longer, I will call the police. So please, leave as soon as possible. When I said this calmly, my ex-mother-in-law and ex-husband made a pathetic sound and left. Then I put a restraining order in place so that I could report my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law if they appeared in front of me. As for the two after that, I sent the proof of the affair to the cafe. And people at work started giving Tyler the cold shoulder. He had no choice but to quit his job at the cafe with his partner. However, he had to pay for the alimony, so he is currently working several part-time jobs. In the end, he is working as much as he did when he was mentally ill at his former company. It looks like his affair partner has left him, and he is now living with his mother. However, my ex-mother-in-law is gradually showing symptoms of dementia, so he has to work hard to pay off his debts, while also taking care of his mother. It served them right. On the other hand, I continue to live with my parents and save money at a very fast pace. In fact, I'm currently saving quite a bit of money. I am planning to invest in the near future to further increase my assets and aim to be semi-retired in a few years.